some things on your classic car that you can never turn the music up loud enough to overcome a noise like brakes make when you're driving down the road. You try to stop and you hear this loud squeak or a loud grind. And brake drums and rotors are not a cool name for a band. They're actually a part on the brakes of your car that need to be tended to, and when you replace parts on your car with regard to the brakes, you need to always pay attention to your brake drums and brake rotors and make sure that they are perfectly round and machined if they need to be machined, so that your brake will stop, or your car will stop real smoothly when you apply the brakes. So this is a surface that we're concerned with on a brake drum. This is a drum, and this is a brake shoe that actually is attached to the axle, and as you stop, this is forced into this drum on both ends. There's two of these, and they squeeze out here and stop this drum from turning. Now, once this shoe wears out, this one isn't worn out, but a lot of them, when they wear out, they become nothing but metal, and then they grind up this surface right here on the brake drum and require that it be turned or machined to make it back perfectly round. Now this is a brand new one, and so is this one over here, and we have to measure these to make sure when we're done that there's enough surface here. And that's this lip right here. Once they've been machined a few times, then they are too thin to reuse, and they have to be discarded and replaced. Now, how do you know when they're too thin to be reused? Well, on most of them, they're marked, like this one. I kind of highlighted this, and it says the maximum diameter, and it's in millimeters, is 28.55 millimeters. So if you have a mic like this, or a ruler or anything that you can measure accurately with, then you just come up here and measure the diameter of this and look at it on your mic, and we have 29.13. So we have, you know, over 1/1000 or 1/10,000 to go backwards. So from a 29 to 28. So this has plenty of meat left on it for us to meat, meaning metal, for us to be able to machine this drum. So now let me show you another thing that needs to be checked before you start turning it. So there is a, actually I got a really old book here, but this book was given to me by the people that sold me this brake machine years and years and years ago. And it has the actual measurements and applications. So like in the very first page here, there's an Audi Fox, which none of us even know what that is anymore. And you can go over here and it will tell you what the minimum and maximum dimensions are for your brake drum and your rotors, so that you're able to determine if they are the wrong size or they've been overused and need to be discarded. Unfortunately, these books are not, they're not around any longer, but I wanted to show them to you, and you can probably look this up on the internet nowadays. But that's what you need to do before you start a lot of work here, to make sure there's plenty of metal here for you to turn it. Okay, now we're at the brake machine, and actually this is called a brake lathe. This machine will actually machine rotors or brake drums like this one. We have already set this one up on here to check it, and this one is actually not any good. I just wanted to show you what the problem is here. Look at this. As we look at the outside of this moving back and forth like that, that means the front plate on this is warped, and that's really not that unusual when you buy a part this old sitting in a parts store somewhere for 25 years, or if it's been machined in another country where they don't pay much attention to tolerances. So I just want you to see this right here, and you can see that that is actually a problem. There's no way you're going to be able to straighten that out on this drum. So I have another one over here. I'm going to set it up, and I'm going to show you how we machine the drum to make sure that it's straight. Okay, now we're looking at another brake drum that we have mounted up on the brake lathe, and just for your purposes of understanding what I'm talking about, you can see that this one has none of the shaky roos here. It's actually turning very straight. If you look right here, you can see that the reference of the brake drum and the cutting tool are pretty much the same all the time. We're not getting any shake like we did on that other one. So that tells us that we can machine this one and make sure that it's in good shape. Make sure what we're wanting to do now is find out if it's perfectly round. So we're going to try to take like a couple thousandths out and see if it smooths out real nicely. So that's a familiar sound that you're going to hear if you're turning brake drums, because you hear the skipping noise in there. That means that this drum is actually not perfectly round. And we're taking about 10 thousandths out right here on the reel, what we call a fast cut. You'll see how the machine's turning right here. It's moving this bit out this way and actually taking metal out of the brake drum to try to make it perfectly round. And you can see the chips that are dripping down in here. And if I hold my light up here, you can kind of see when this thing comes around, there's a kind of a bright spot and then a dull spot, which indicates that this drum is not round and needs some work just to make sure that it's machined properly. So that'll take about, I don't know, a minute or two, and we'll go off camera here till we get done, and then we'll come back and show you again. One of the things that people don't really realize is that this machine has speeds on it. You know, man, they got cruise control, but it's certainly got a speed level here so that you can speed up the process of this tool coming back or make it come back at a slower rate as that turns. Well, like when you have a metal lathe you machine it out there, you already know that if you go real slow and cross there, you're going to get a real shiny finish. So it's the same thing with this. When we first start, we come at about 10 miles an hour, so that's like going down the highway pretty fast. And then as we slow down, and you can hear now that it's rubbing all the way around as it's cutting, we want to slow that process down of pulling the tool out so that it leaves it with a finer, nicer finish. So we're on 4 miles an hour right now. We hope maybe we can get down to 2, but if it looks all right at 4, we'll stop because we don't want to take any more metal out than we have to. Now we're getting a little bit of it's actually singing to us now, so we need to put this anti-vibration strap on there to reduce some of the vibration in there, because what happens is when it gets to a certain point, it seems to want to sing to you, and that's not a good thing. So we'll put this on there and see if that won't stop a little bit of it. Hey, I finished, this is my last cut, and I'm really pretty happy with this. There's still a lot of stuff in there, and you know, back in the day, the brake manufacturers said the only way to clean this appropriately was soap and water, because the brake drum, after you've cleaned it out with this tool and ground off material, is pretty porous. And if you come back with a substance like brake clean or any kind of caustic stuff, it actually gets soaked up into this drum. So if I do this, you can kind of see there's some in here, and I think just a dry wipe is probably your best approach, and make sure that it's all cleaned up. If you chose to try to turn a drum that's been soaked in oil from an axle leak, then you probably ought to toss it, because they don't turn well, and they'll always hold that axle fluid in there, and every time the drum gets hot from stopping, it will cause all kinds of problems of the wheel locking up and things that you don't want to have happen. So start with a new fresh drum. If you don't have, which most people don't have this sitting around in their garage, but if you have a brake lathe, I hope this helped you a little bit. If you don't, go to a machine shop and able to do this. It's kind of an old art nowadays, because most people on the later model cars just buy these parts and just install them and don't give it a much of a concern. But I like to make sure this is all trued up and square, because on older cars they seem to highlight when something doesn't work right. So we make sure this is all perfect. And then I'm going to do another video on my brake arcing machine, which actually now will grind these brake shoes so that this is a perfect circle, this radius part of a circle, and will fit on the inside 100%. There again, you get parts like this that come from manufacturers that don't do this anymore, and they just slop this stuff together. And I already checked this against the existing brake drum, and it didn't fit well. It hit here, but not here and here. So I'm going to do one on my radiusing machine just to show you how we can kind of change out the radius of this part of this shoe to fit better, so that when you try to stop, all of this applies, not just a part of it. I'm Barry Wilson at Wilson Auto Repair. Go to my website, wilsonauto.com, or subscribe on here if you want to. We'd love to have you watch more of our videos. I hope this is helpful.